Hey, Roger Martin here again from Billings, Montana. I don't understand all the stuff that's going on in China financially, to say the least. But this is the third or fourth reliable report that indicates that China is in some serious financial trouble. Um, and I'll let this guy explain part of it. Um, he did this on November 19th of this year. This is the first time I've seen it.
Which could have big ramifications for the dollar. But at this point, my base case is that the dollar is going to remain stable to strong, and China's not going to get bailed out. So in that environment where you have a global drag on China PPI, which is minus 1.6 at last print, that's a big drag on the Chinese economy. Credit stimulus doesn't fix that. They need a weak dollar or easy global liquidity conditions.
Now, you got to understand that this is on the minus side on this PPI, and he says you need a weak dollar, and it's not going to be weak, it's going to be stronger. And printing more money is not going to solve their problem. So China is in some serious financial trouble, and the foreign markets are showing this. The pressure they're putting on Hong Kong is showing this. But they're in trouble. This is the third or fourth report that we've had from reliable people that China has some real financial problems that their printing money is not going to help solve.
Which again, not my forecast. The last problem they have is there's not really a clean balance sheet that they can dump the next credit stimulus on. So bank lending grows at 11 to 13% year in, year out. There's capital constraints on accelerating.
Now, there's a problem in and of that. They're pushing all this money in their banks, but it's not real. And you're going to see some serious problems because of the strength of the dollar and the foreign exchanges.
That it just really wouldn't be credible given the current capital base, and I think it's going to be difficult for China to find external sources of capitalization to really accelerate bank lending from 13 to 18, let's say. A couple of the stimulus programs of the last few years were run through the shadow sector. As we discussed, they don't want that to grow any larger because they can't control it. They can't control what gets rolled and what doesn't in the shadow sector very easily, but they can't control where the
Now, they call this shadow credit. In and of itself, it's a problem.
money goes. So in this moral hazard environment in China, when there's a trust institution, for instance, allocating credit, and the investors of that trust believe the government will bail them out, but then that trust can lend to whoever they want to. You're basically, the government's writing free checks. So that, they're not going back to that either. And the balance sheet everybody thought would be utilized this year was the government. So there's a lot of talk about fiscal stimulus. The problem was they used that in 2015, where they layered a municipal bond borrowing program on top of the normal central government borrowing program. So we're now in year 5 of government debt issuance on the tune of 9 to 11% of GDP per year.
Wow. Can you wrap your mind around that? 5th year. And the billionaire that came here, that escaped, he says they're going down next year. This is not going to hold through 2020. We'll see.
Sort of a hidden secret because a lot of it's munis. This does not include local government financing vehicles, by the way, which are generally registered as corporates. So central government, muni debt, and infrastructure bonds, 9 to 11% a year for year 5. So earlier this year, when everybody said they're going to do fiscal stimulus, my thought was, where are they taking that number? Are they going to go from 9% of GDP government borrowing to 15? Is that credible? And the last thing I would say about resorting to stimulus, the numbers are getting really big. So at 12% credit, you're talking something like $4 trillion of new credit. How many bridges, tunnels, subways, and airports is that? Next year would have to be 4.5 if they want to stimulate. And now, you know, the first airport.
Now that's why they're putting all this money into these new cities and stuff, but no one in Ford can live there. This is going to implode on them sooner or later. I don't know when, but they can't keep this game up, and they know it. And the poor in China know it, and the people in China, I believe, know it too. This financial economic collapse is coming to China is going to really cause some serious problems worldwide, especially in China and countries that are heavily connected with China's production, like we are. Something's going to have to be restructured and redone. They're going to have to either go back on gold or something else. And I think there's rumors right now that they're going to go back on gold to do this. China has bought up tons and tons of gold. I think the only way they're going to have to be solvent in this situation is to go back to a gold standard. And I think we're going to be forced in doing the same thing. And I think the World Bank's are going to be forced to go back to a gold standard, which is really going to push gold up. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. We'll see what happens. But it could be a very rough ride the next 3 to 4 to 5 years for China, to say the least. But we'll see how this all turns out. Again, this is Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. This very interesting report. When they call this shadow credit, boy, that's an understatement, and it's scary to think that the governments and the central banks on China have been doing this and other manipulative things for so long and actually getting away with it. And it wasn't for their trade that they've got going on worldwide, they'd already be in collapse. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We'll see what happens in the next several years. Good day.